They had already conquered Europe. No army could stand against them. Kings had fallen. Empires had surrendered. But in 1812, Napoleon marched east. Not against a king, not against an army, but against something far more patient, far more ruthless, and far more deadly. Winter. At the height of his power, Napoleon Bonaparte ruled over a continent. From Spain to Poland, his empire stretched like a steel net across Europe. His enemies had been crushed. Austria humiliated. Prussia shattered. Even mighty Russia had once bowed to him. He was not just a general. He was a force of history. And in 1812, he believed he was unstoppable. But empires do not collapse in a single explosion. They unravel, one decision at a time. The mistake. Napoleon's goal was simple: punish Russia for defying him. Tsar Alexander had begun trading with Britain, France's greatest enemy. Napoleon could not allow it. Control of Europe meant control of trade, and control of trade meant control of power. So he assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen. Over 600,000 men. French, Polish, German, Italian, Dutch. An army so massive it stretched for miles. When they crossed into Russia, it looked like the beginning of another easy victory. But the Russians did something unexpected. They refused to fight. Instead of defending their land, they retreated deeper into it. And as they retreated, they burned everything. Villages, crops, food stores. Fields turned to ash. Wells poisoned. The deeper Napoleon marched, the emptier the land became. This was not a war of glory. It was a war of patience. For weeks, the Grande Armée marched forward. Horses collapsed from exhaustion. Supplies thinned. But Napoleon pressed on. He needed a decisive battle. He needed one crushing victory to force Russia to surrender. Finally, near a village called Borodino, the Russians stood their ground. The battle was brutal. Cannon smoke swallowed the sky. Tens of thousands fell in a single day. It was one of the bloodiest battles in European history. Napoleon technically won, but it was not the victory he needed. The Russian army retreated again. Still alive, still intact, still refusing to surrender. When Napoleon entered Moscow, he expected triumph. Instead, he found silence. The city was nearly empty, and then it began to burn. Fires spread across Moscow. The Russians had abandoned their ancient capital and set it ablaze. Napoleon waited. Surely the Tsar would negotiate now. Surely no ruler would allow his sacred capital to burn without surrendering. But the Tsar did nothing. Days turned into weeks. The fires died. The cold arrived. And still, no surrender. Napoleon had captured a ghost, and winter was coming. The first frost. At first it was just cold mornings. Then frost clung to uniforms. Then snow began to fall. The temperature dropped below freezing. Then far below freezing. Soldiers who had marched in summer uniforms now faced temperatures they had never imagined. Food was scarce. Horses died by the thousands. Without horses, cannons were useless, abandoned. Without horses, supply wagons were left behind. Men began to fall, not from bullets, but from cold. Frostbite blackened fingers. Boots froze to skin. The army that had once shaken Europe now struggled simply to survive the night. The retreat. Napoleon had no choice. He ordered retreat. But retreat across a devastated land is not escape. His suffering stretched across miles. The roads were ice. Snowstorms blinded entire columns. Men fell behind and were never seen again. Some froze where they stood, others starved. Russian cavalry harassed the flanks. Cossacks attacked stragglers. But winter remained the deadliest enemy. The Grande Armée disintegrated. Discipline vanished. Order collapsed. The march east had been organized. The march west became chaos. The crossing of the Berezina. One moment symbolized the collapse. The Berezina River. French engineers built fragile bridges over icy waters while Russian forces closed in. Panic spread. Thousands rushed to cross. Bridges broke. Men fell into freezing water. Screams echoed over the river as soldiers drowned or froze within minutes. It was not a battle. It was survival. And survival was losing. What was lost? When Napoleon crossed into Russia, over 600,000 men marched with him. When he left, barely 100,000 remained. Some estimates say fewer than 50,000 were still combat ready. The greatest army in Europe had been destroyed. Not by a single battle, not by a superior general, but by distance, by overconfidence, by logistics, and by winter. This was the moment everything changed. News of the disaster spread across Europe. The myth of Napoleon's invincibility was shattered. Prussia revolted. Austria reconsidered. Coalitions formed again. Enemies who once feared him now saw weakness. The empire began to crack. Within 2 years, Napoleon would be forced to abdicate. Within 3, he would stand defeated at Waterloo. But it began here, in the snow, in the silence, in the cold. The deeper truth: winter did not destroy Napoleon alone. His decision did. He believed speed would overcome distance. He believed fear would force surrender. He believed one more campaign would secure his dominance. But empires often fall not because they are weak, but because they overreach. History is filled with conquerors who marched too far. The snow did not care about empire. The frost did not recognize rank. Winter does not negotiate. It waits, it endures, and when the moment is right, it wins.